Hi, guys. Welcome to my podcast, Aphid's Garden. I'm Avery, and today I'll be discussing the upbringing of late 80s, early 90s Irish singer songwriter Sinead O'Connor, the psychological disorders she suffers from, as well as essentially Sinead being one of the first people to be what we call canceled. Before I begin, just a huge trigger warning, I will be talking about mental illness and a lot of abuse and sexual assault. So let's begin by talking about Sinead O'Connor's childhood and also upbringing into stardom. So Sinead grew up in an extremely abusive household in Ireland. Following her parents' divorce, she lived with her mother, which, according to O'Connor's interview with People's Magazine, had an obsession with destroying her womb. She would beat and kick her and her siblings daily, lock them in pitch black rooms for days on end, refuse to change their clothes or give them opportunities to shower, and just overall neglected Sinead. According to O'Connor, her mother Marie hated that Sinead was female. She dressed her in traditionally male clothing as a baby, and through rape and other forms of physical abuse, would target Sinead's reproductive system. Her mother struggled with drugs and had mental disorders of her own. And at 13, Sinead went to live with her dad. And between the ages of 14 and 16, Sinead and her mother actually got along really well. Sinead thinks that this is because of how Sinead O'Connor had grown enough so that she is the same size as her mother, and maybe her mom felt threatened by that. Marie, Sinead's mother, never admitted to the abuse she forced her daughter to endure. When confronted by Sinead, she never even thought any of what Sinead O'Connor was saying happened, which is very bizarre, but also common for abusers to gaslight their victims. By 19 years old, Sinead's mother passed away in a car crash. And during her late teens, she was sent to a strict Catholic school for troubled young women. And although this is such a traumatizing space for anyone to be in, it was here where Sinead began her passion for music. In an interview with NPR, she explains that one of the nuns, named Sister Margaret, encouraged Sinead to sing and even took her to a punk rock store to purchase the musical necessities like a leather jacket and her first guitar. Margaret brought in a guitar teacher for Sinead, which led to singing opportunities, touring around Dublin, and eventually her 1987 debut, The Lion and the Cobra. This album was an immediate hit, selling 2.5 million copies worldwide. Sinead challenged music genre as she was bold in featuring all different types of artists in her songs and straddled between newly mainstream alternative pop and just generalized pop music. So she kind of redefined a whole genre and made her own thing with it. The song she's best known for is titled Nothing Compares to You, and it was written by Prince on her album I Do Not Want What I Haven't Gotten. This song hits the charts in several countries, which estimated sales topping 7 million worldwide. Now we're going to get into Sinead's psychological disorder. So the diagnosed psychological disorder that Sinead suffers from is PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. According to the textbook, PTSD is defined as a disorder characterized by haunting memories, nightmares, hypervigilance, social withdrawal, jumpy anxiety, numbness of feeling, and or insomnia that lingers for 4 weeks or more after a traumatic experience. Sinead's PTSD is caused by the abuse that her mother made her go through and just the household environment in general. She had to be fixated on surviving the abuse at home, but now that she's in her 50s and out of the Hollywood light, she's able to manage her PTSD as well as just take time to feel emotions and reflect. In an interview with People's Magazine, Sinead stated, "You can never predict what might trigger the PTSD. I describe myself as a rescue dog. I am fine until you put me in a situation that even slightly smells like any of the trauma I went through. Then I flip my lid." End quote. She says she manages very well because she's been taught brilliant skills through a lot of therapy and focusing on things that bring her peace as opposed to what makes her feel unstable. She spent 6 years recovering in and out of mental health facilities as well. According to Medline Plus, in order to be diagnosed, you have to have at least one re-experiencing symptom of PTSD, at least one avoidance symptom, at least 2 arousal and reactivity symptoms, and at least 2 cognition and mood symptoms throughout a minimum of 1 month. The treatments of PTSD include therapy, which is a space patients are able to identify what triggers them and how to manage it, as well as medications, which can help with symptoms of PTSD. Antidepressants may also help control symptoms such as sadness, worry, anger, and feeling numb inside. And other medications can help with sleep problems and nightmares. Let's also talk about Sinead O'Connor's activism throughout her career and why she was essentially the first person canceled. So Sinead O'Connor isn't just known to be a phenomenal singer, she's also an activist. She supported the artists who protested the Grammys after the award show's decision to not televise the category for Best Rap Performance. She also performed on the Grammy stage with Public Enemy, the hip-hop group's logo shaved on the side of her head. She declined industry awards as she believed they were too focused on commercial success and not enough on artistic merit. Sinead was criticized worldwide for her 1992 SNL performance, and this is what led to her being canceled, but it also led to her finding a new sense of freedom. So she performed the song War by Bob Marley right before the song ended. She closed her set by tearing up a photo of Pope John Paul II. This gesture intended to draw attention to the Catholic Church's complicity in perpetuating child abuse, and already the subject of public discussion in her native land. She thought it was, right to talk about it, as it was already being discussed. It was also later learned that the photograph came from Sinead's mother's house, so not only was this a protest of the silenced child abuse in the church, but also the abuse from her mother. The response that followed was not pretty. The Anti-Defamation League condemned O'Connor along with Madonna and Phil Hartman. Conservative groups steamrolled her records into pieces, and when actor Joe Pesci hosted SNL the following week, he threatened to smack her on live television. So 2 weeks later, O'Connor was booed at a tribute concert for Bob Dylan, signaling the end of one phase of her career and the start of another. O'Connor says that even though the aftermath was painful, she isn't sorry. She had wanted to use her voice to turn the trauma that she'd experienced into a powerful healing force. And not even a decade later, many people's firsthand accounts of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church began to spread, and people believed them. Not only this, but SNL is now an incredibly liberal late-night live comedy show that would perhaps even encourage Sinead's protest if she were to do it again today. Although they didn't really choose a side after Sinead's protest, I think they were pretty embarrassed because they could have lost a lot of their sponsors, so they kind of just stayed quiet about it, which is not SNL today. Like, they're very out there about what their show represents. It's also no doubt that Generation Z would have praised and welcomed Sinead O'Connor's presence in the music industry, as we often find fault with the people who have a platform that choose to stay silent in hopes of not losing their career, which is not what Sinead O'Connor did. Currently, Sinead O'Connor is 56 years old and lives in a cottage in a tiny village on the Irish mountaintop. She lives a simple life, sealed into her own world, and in an interview with the New York Times, she states that she's lucky to find enjoyment in her own company. Sinead continues to shave her head about every 10 days and finds satisfaction in living in a place free of the media. She says, quote, "Down the mountain, as I call it, nobody can forget about Sinead O'Connor. But up in the village, nobody cares," which is beautiful for me. So thank you guys for listening. This concludes this podcast, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye.